Welcome back to another episode of The Political Life. Today we come to you from a combination of NCSL and Washington, D.C. via Stateside Associates. We're not in Denver anymore. We are not in Washington, D.C., but we are talking to James Bookwalter, who never goes by James. He goes by Jake. That's how everybody knows him. And Jake is actually from Connecticut, got his start here in politics after going to Trinity College. He worked for the House Republicans, made his way quickly down to D.C. to stateside. He has been there ever since, and now has very much a national footprint, and everybody knows who he is. He heads up issues and information at Stateside, and whenever you see him at a conference, you will see him banging away on his computer, and you know he is summarizing the panel discussion that he is attending for all of their members or their clients, and sending that right out. He is, and I'm not just saying this because he's here on the podcast, he is very, very highly regarded and very well thought of, and very smart, and just a great political issues person, a great political operative, and Jake, we're just very happy to have you on the show.
Well, thank you for that really, really nice introduction. Better than I could have done of myself. So I really appreciate that, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
Well, what prompted it, and Jake knows what prompted it. We were walking into a panel discussion at NCSL, and I said, so did you do anything special during COVID? And he said, well, I kind of traveled the world and started off in Belgrade. And I'm like, oh, we got to have you on the podcast. And that's how this whole thing began. But before we get to your world travels during COVID, Jake, just tell our listeners a little bit about your responsibilities and what you do there.
Sure. So I am one of the vice presidents here at Stateside Associates. I work in our legislative research department, and I do a lot of our client-facing work. That's, getting our clients set up on the right path to cover issues from a 50-state focus. I assist with identifying key trends for our clients, putting out information on those. But one of the big projects I'm working on right now is actually tracking how states are spending their COVID funds, their ARPA money, and their newest IIJA funds, or newest. I mean, they got a while ago, sort of. But so we're helping our clients keep an eye on how states are rolling out, their broadband plans, how they're going to complete this transition to the clean energy economy through EV incentives, infrastructure deployments that surround it, as well as all of the renewable energy investments. So that's actually taking up the bulk of my time these days, is keeping tabs on that money. And it's not always easy for anyone who covers 50 states. Some states are very transparent, and others not so much.
So we won't throw any states under the bus. Why don't you tell us some of the states that are the best at being transparent?
Some of the states that I found the best to be transparent are actually in the South. And it's not because they have sophisticated websites. It's that when you pick up the phone, they actually want to talk to you and answer your questions. There are certain New England states that I have, tried to call or send emails to that don't always get back to you with the same speed or pleasantness that some of the southern states have that do. So I do appreciate that about our southern states. They tend to be very friendly. Some states, though, are terrific at putting a lot of information online, so you don't even have to call them. Maryland seems to do a very good job with that for a lot of the information I'm trying to find. California as well. So, the tech-savvy states that you'd expect put a lot of information online.
And we saw each other at NCSL in Denver, which is probably the biggest legislative conference every year. This year, they had about 5,000 people. Pre-COVID, they would typically get, between 7 and 8. It's run by Tim Story and his team there at NCSL, and they do a great job. I'm just curious, what other conferences do you typically attend?
Sure. Prior to NCSL, I was at the RLCC retreat at Marco Island. That was a really good conference. You have some great opportunities to engage with the Republican legislative leaders. A number of my colleagues cover the Democrat events. I tend to go to more of the Republican events, hence my background at HRO.
Any more conferences this summer?
I'm not sure yet. I might go to the RLCC in early September. Have not gotten my conference assignment yet, but that would be the next one if I went.
And just for people may remember, we have had a number of stateside people here on the podcast. We've had Stephanie Reich on, and Stephanie, I think it was Stephanie who organized having your two CEOs, Mark and Michael, on. And so Jake will be just adding to that list of stateside people on the show.
And she says hi, by the way. Her and I randomly live within 2 blocks from each other. So we actually carpool every morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, Stephanie is great, and I've known her a long time. I knew her when she was working for the city government in Washington, D.C., and then she went on from there and ended up at Stateside. So, yeah, Stephanie is great. And we had a great interview with your two CEOs, which was very, very interesting. And then, and Bob Maurice, who has since moved on to where
he
is
he? Working at, and I might butcher the name of the organization, but I want to say it's like the Trade Ministry of Quebec. They have their own sort of segment. It's like related to the embassy, but it's separate. So it's sort of like an independent trade mission. I think of it as if California was to have an office in another country. It kind of functions like that.
Yeah, I think that's right. All right, so let's talk about your COVID travels. Where did you, how did you, I mean, obviously you got the idea, you're like, God, I could go anywhere. I won't get this chance very often in my life. I might as well pick up and go. Is that what happened? And where did you go?
No.
Oh, okay. All right.
What happened.
All right.
So it wasn't I could go anywhere. It was where could I go? And I mean, if we, wind the clock back, I literally, right before, the COVID shutdown, I had kind of hit every hot spot. So I might be the super spreader, but I had been in Hong Kong, then I had been in LA, and then I was in London for that Brexit party I'd mentioned, and then everything sort of shut down. So I had been telling myself, oh, all right, this isn't going to last. It'll, clear itself up. I'm sure a lot of people were telling themselves that. And then we got, started working from home. And I'm just sort of sitting in my apartment, you work and then what? You're home. So I was like, okay, I'm going to work on some of my domestic skills. I'm going to teach myself how to cook. I spent, 3 months, convincing myself that this was fun. So I had a friend who came over and we would just make these elaborate dinners because both he and I had missed going out to dinner so much. So we're going to try and reclaim some of this. Well, the other thing that a lot of people might have started to appreciate in being stuck at home was you're in the same 4 little wall space and you start to notice everything that is probably wrong about where you live. I should really repaint this room. I should really redo the molding here. I hate these doors. I miss having stairs, whatever it was. And as I'm, calculating out the cost of these renovations, I was like, but you know what? I really just miss traveling. So I'm going to try and go somewhere. That was one of the biggest things for me is I didn't fully appreciate how often I traveled to other countries. And it was such a bigger part of my life. So I started looking around to see where I could go. That was issue number 1. And, in getting ready for this call, I was trying to reconstruct where I had been because COVID is kind of just one blur. And I had completely forgotten that the first place I went wasn't actually Serbia, it was Mexico. And they didn't really shut down the way other places did. I could go. The requirements to get in were so light. And so I went to Mexico City, which is actually one of my favorite places. If you've never been, I would encourage anyone to go. They have an amazing food scene. Their art is terrific. It's really easy to get around. Everyone there that I've ever encountered has been super friendly. And as an American citizen, your money goes very far. And I've actually never felt unsafe there. A lot of people are like, oh, Mexico City, it's so dangerous. I have never felt unsafe there. So that was actually the first place I went. Then I came back and to a lot of flack, particularly from my mother. Jake, you're being so irresponsible. You're going to get COVID and then you're stuck there. And then what? Okay, Mom. I'm single at the time. I don't have any kids. I'm relatively healthy. So I can either allow my mental health to deteriorate or I can really focus on things I love. And I chose to focus on things I love. So I came home. That didn't last. I went back to Mexico. This time I went to Oaxaca in the south, which if anyone's ever been to San Miguel, it's like a grittier San Miguel. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just San Miguel is very one way and Oaxaca is kind of the other. They have, excellent food, excellent art scene. But if you go to both cities, I think you would kind of get what I mean. So then from there, I came back.
And how long were you there?
I was in Oaxaca for 3+ weeks.
Okay.
I had this wonderful room. It had its own pool. It cost me less to stay there than it would for me to go out like I normally would in Washington, D.C. So I'm not even spending any more money. In fact, I might even be saving money at this point somehow. So I came back and then looking at where else I could go, I landed on Serbia. Now, that list of where you could go, if you were looking at the time, was really short. I mean, really short, like 6 countries short. So Serbia didn't really shut down. And, you could argue that was foolish or not, but I went. I would never have gone. And I moved into the Metropole Hotel where I posted up for just a number of weeks. And within this hotel was this kind of artificial community. So it's me. Now, keep in mind, I've kept my East Coast hours. So my workday is starting at about 3 in the afternoon. It would end at 11 or 12 at night. So it's me, these 2 Russian oligarchs, or, to be fair to them, I don't know if they were oligarchs, but they were definitely Russian and definitely very wealthy. Mm-hmm. These 2 guys that kept meeting in the hotel selling used auto parts, which I have to imagine was code for something. I don't know how many shipments of used auto parts you can keep expecting to come in at certain hours. There were these people from LA who were filming this movie and working on a script. This woman, who I swear was Helen Mirren's stunt double, and if she does stunts. And then these sort of other characters that would come in and out of this hotel. There was the charming British couple or the guy in the trench coat. It just truly, interesting. It was like a bad Wes Anderson film. So everyone would sort of congregate in this, the top of the hotel where the restaurant was. And it overlooked Belgrade, which is a pretty interesting city. It has a large number of terrific French restaurants. I was surprised at that. It's a very Art Deco-y looking city. So if you kind of squinted, you'd swear you were in Paris, which is nice for somebody like me who really missed going to Paris. Mm-hmm. And then there was popcorn on every corner. I thought this was the weirdest thing. And, sure. if you're in Manhattan and you see like the sort of hot dog stands everywhere, or the pretzel stands everywhere, the popcorn was the equivalent of that. And it's on every corner. And I finally asked somebody about it. And they're like, oh, it's cheap. I was like, huh, that makes sense.
Okay.
So I was there for a while. And then I decided to come back.
So when you were, what was it like? You're hanging out in the restaurant or down in the lobby having your morning coffee. What was it like interacting with these different people? You must have felt like you were in some strange B movie or something.
I don't want to call it like being in a snow globe because it's not like somebody was actively shaking it, though they could change the law and then all of a sudden you'd be stuck there. It was weird because everybody was kind of interested in why everyone else was there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean it was weird from, the two Russian guys asking me what I was doing or the guys selling auto parts. The staff were fascinated. The staff were really fascinated why people were all of a sudden coming to their
hanging out in their hotel
in the middle of a pandemic
from around the world.
Right. And Belgrade, there's no mask policy. You could go out to dinner. Occasionally they would do these soft shutdowns, but they weren't really enforced. And
that's
it was
incredible. Yeah. Just amazing. And you went there alone?
Yeah. Oh, I did all of these alone.
And how long were you in Belgrade?
It was longer than a month, but I'm struggling to remember.
Yeah. All right. So about a month. All right.
Right. I'm sort of becoming like one of these permanent guests in these hotels because I kept staying at hotels.
And it was cheap. It was affordable.
Right. It's cheap. And this hotel in particular, I got free breakfast. They did my laundry. I got a wine stipend. So, every few days the hotel staff was like, here's some wine. And Serbian wine, which I knew very little about, was actually quite good.
Mm-hmm.
So I recommend it if you can find some.
Well, that's great. All right. And then where did you go from there?
So see, after Serbia, I came back and then I decided that I was going to try something different and go to Colombia. So
wow. Yeah.
I ended up in Bogota and I was living in the W Hotel there, which was also terrific. Really, really great food there. It was right around the time that they were having the protests. And, of course, I get this text from my mother. Doing this is so unsafe. I'm watching, the news. It's like, Mom, they say the protests are taking place in the presidential square. Yes. Well, I'm there right now. Here's what's going on. There's 4 people with a sign and a llama. It was...
I'm thinking at some point you might want to just not tell your mother you're traveling. Just
right.
Tell her, yeah.
So I was there for a while, and then I decided to go to Cartagena, which I had never been to. And I got to tell you, I liked Bogota better. I guess I'm more of a city person than a beach person.
Mm-hmm.
To anyone listening, if you like cheap emeralds, go to Colombia. It's where they're all from. You get amazing discount jewelry because that is literally legally what everyone is selling.
Okay.
But at my time in Bogota, I randomly stumbled into this bar, and it was like the one Republican expat bar because everybody I met drinking this bar was a Republican, and they were all from the East Coast. So it was nice to have some things in common and some easy conversation to have in English.
And what were they doing down there? Working or vacation, or what were they doing down there?
They were actually doing something similar to what I had done. They were just, I need something different. Yeah. And again, Colombia was one of those countries that didn't really shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what they were doing there. So from Colombia, and this is where it sort of gets tricky to like reconstruct this timeline, I then was in Italy. It was right when they had loosened restrictions, and I had wanted to see this exhibit at the Capelon Museum, and they had ended up extending it because of COVID, and it was like the 300 best like busts of Roman emperors. I don't know, something just ridiculous. And so I went, and one of the things I try and work into a lot of the trips I do is I try and do a culinary aspect. So I decided I was going to do a cooking class in Italy. So I'm one of, 5 people in this class. It's me and then a family of 4. Well, the funny thing about the family of 4 is one of the guys, the son in this family, is actually living in Hartford, Connecticut. Randomly, like, what are the odds that this guy is living in the town that I grew up in, and we're both in this same cooking class in Rome? The story gets a little weirder because he's literally sitting next to me on the flight home. I had flown back to JFK, and so had he, and we were just taking Amtrak in different directions.
Oh my God.
But yeah.
What
So
are the odds? I mean, that's
right. I don't know. I'm not a
I mean,
mathematician.
it's not like
Scientist.
it's not like Hartford is New York City.
Right.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So from there, I then obviously came back for a few weeks and then had my birthday party in Ireland. They're my favorite gin, Drumshambo, if you guys have never had. Comes in these really pretty looking blue bottles. It's one of the few gin distilleries in Ireland. So a bunch of my friends met me there and had a classic distillery party. And from
great.
there,
Where in Ireland? Where'd you go?
so I started in Dublin, but I'd been to Dublin a number of times. So that's where my friends met me. We took a cocktail making class at Jameson, which was a lot of fun. And then rented a car and drove up to Carrick-on-Shannon, where this gin mill is.
Okay.
Stayed there for a few days, and then went up to Belfast, which I had never explored, which is a really cool city. And if you've ever seen that show Dairy Girls, Londonderry or Derry is right over there. So we also went there as well. From there, left, spent some time in Bath in the UK, stayed there for a bit. Came back, was here, I don't know, 3 weeks, went up to Canada. My family spent a lot of time there when I was a kid and went up to do that, left Canada, went back to Mexico, to Oaxaca again, which I cannot recommend enough. Then we sort of got the call back to the office. And so we're all starting to trickle back in. Another outbreak of COVID.
Right.
So we all sort of go back home.
Yeah.
I finally get COVID.
I was dying. I was waiting till you were going to get done. And then I'm going to say, did you get COVID during any of these world travels? You finally
I got it in America.
Of course.
So
right.
I had avoided it all abroad.
So the lesson was stay out of America, around the world.
Stay abroad.
All those planes, all those trains, all those restaurants, all those places, no COVID. Come back to the U.S., you get COVID. Okay.
So I come back, get COVID. Not thrilled I got it. But I had also been vaccinated, which I encourage anyone to do who's not. Because when I did get it, my symptoms were so mild. I'm not even sure I would have known I had it had I not said something to one of my friends. I was like, I wonder if I have mono. And they're like, how in the world did you get mono? You probably have COVID. Because my symptoms were just, I was tired and my body hurt.
So they were a little vague, the symptoms. Yep.
Yeah.
So you tested positive. You're like, hey, I got COVID.
Right. And it's sort of.
Now I have the vaccine and natural immunity. I am ready to travel again.
And promptly went to Romania.
Oh my God. I was kidding.
The day after I was eligible to go, I had my flight to Bucharest and lived at the JW Marriott there, which is a terrific hotel. And when I was there for a short time in terms of me traveling. I think it was only like 3 weeks. And then randomly came back. And then the last place I went before NCSL was the Czech Republic.
Oh, and how was that?
It was great. I'd been to Prague before, so I explored the southern Bohemia. Totally blanking on the name of the town I was in, but it looked like if you smushed Prague into a little island the size of Nantucket, that's what it would be, or not even the size of Nantucket, probably the size of Hartford.
Now it sounds like you liked all of these places, Jake. But if you had to pick one or two places, is there one or two that stand out for you?
So if I can't go to my regulars, which I'm probably one of the few people you'll ever talk to that loves Venice.
Okay.
Or I love going to Paris. I really liked Belgrade.
Okay.
It was interesting.
Different.
They got one foot in the door of the EU and the other foot out. They have a fascinating history. One of the best books I bought abroad was Tito's cookbook. And he was the dictator of Yugoslavia, president or whatever he wanted to call himself. And it was all the meals he had ever been fed as a head of state. And there's also a reason I've discovered that Americans don't really make boiled chicken anymore because it's not good. but that was one of the recipes. I had such high hopes because it was from the French section. But no, I would skip that page if anyone else has this book. But it was one of the coolest museums I've ever been to. Was in Belgrade. It was a museum of every gift Tito had ever been given. And there are some just weird things in this museum. And it was just an interesting take on presenting a story. It's right by his tomb, which, if you're familiar with failed 90s malls, is what I would describe the feel of his tomb looks like. These weird white tiles. You'd swear there's like a Hot Topic behind one of the planters. But in his tomb, he has these, they're batons. So every year they would have a big, Yugoslavia games. And at the end, or the beginning, I can't remember the order, he'd be handed this like ceremonial baton, which had been crafted by one of the trades unions. And so they're just all on display.
Oh my God.
But yeah, no, it's a very different place. They had left a lot of the buildings that had been bombed during the Baltic War as sort of reminders to the citizens. And there's these kind of recruitment posters around them. But it was just a very interesting and different city. And I hadn't been to a city like that in a while. So it really stuck with me. And your money does go really far. So I would certainly go back.
So that also helps.
That also helped. I would not go back for the food.
Okay.
There's a reason we use tomato sauce in this country on pizza and not, ketchup.
Okay. Really? Wow.
Yes, it was a bite of sadness.
Boy.
Is how I would describe
that seems just awful.
Yes.
I mean, I remember ketchup on spaghetti in college, but after that, I haven't really revisited that.
I thought that point of my life was over, and then
it wasn't.
Not so much.
Now, Jake, you've also done so much traveling. So what we're trying to do here is we've had our listeners know we've had Katie Kincaid on, former Lyft person, former Ease. So many in-house state government relations people know who Katie is, and Katie's been kind of traveling the world and consulting as she's doing it, and you're doing a similar type thing here. So let me ask you, because obviously a lot of our listeners do a lot of traveling. Do you have any travel tips or tricks that you use or could suggest to people?
Sure. The first tip that I have is I never travel with clothes I care about. Everything I have everything I bring is pretty much stuff I was either going to throw out or donate. I have a really bad memory. So one of the things I do to help remind me of these places I've been is I buy stuff. And classic, you don't have enough room in your suitcase. The benefit to traveling with stuff you don't care about is you can toss it while you're there, or you can use it as packaging. I usually try and buy interesting liquors when I'm abroad. And, if let's say a bottle shattered in your suitcase and you probably ruin things you care about. So that's also why I travel with stuff I don't care about. One of the traditions I do for my two nephews is every time I go somewhere, I buy them a bottle of whiskey or the closest thing that a country has to that, so that when they turn 21, they have all these different whiskeys from countries I've been to. So they're being stored in my sister's basement to be given to them when they turn 21.
That's I like that. That is a very good tip. And then you're not going to worry about losing your luggage.
Right. And and in this day and age, with the threat of lost luggage is very real and increasingly very frequent.
Yes.
Just one less thing to worry about.
Yeah, that's a very good tip. All right, Jake. So to wrap it up, we're at 30 minutes. You gave us a little bit. You told us a little bit about the things you're working on, tracking all this money. At Stateside, as you look forward to the coming year, is there anything on your radar screen that you're thinking about or going to be looking for in 2023?
Sure. One of the sort of side projects that I'm working on is following the election, I'm going to be tracking campaign promises and do those campaign promises translate into action.
Jake, you are not going to be popular with the elected officials. Tracking. Jake, come on. Are you?
It's more about helping to build a profile of what you can expect for state policy. So I look at a state like Connecticut, and here are the issues that, candidates that won that talked about. All right, well, on its surface, everyone makes campaign promises. Okay, then starting to look at, do they hold a leadership position? Are they chairs of a certain committee? And then sort of putting that give a context of what you can expect to see coming up or coming out of the state legislatures. So that's one of the things I'm working on.
That's a very good way to look at it. Well, Jake, it has been great having you on. It was great to see you with the old gang back in Denver at NCSL.
I really enjoyed that, our impromptu happy hour. Maybe I was the impromptu guest. Maybe you guys have been planning it. Like,
No, I think that was organized by Michael Johnson of Sullivan and Lashane, and he pulled together a group of 30 people in, about 30 minutes. So a shout out to Michael Johnson. Yeah. All right. Well, Jake, it's been great to have you on. For our listeners out there, remember you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. You can sign up for our email. It's politicallife.net. Jake, tell everyone at Stateside we said hello, particularly Stephanie and Mark and Michael and everyone else. And for our listeners out there, we hope you're well, and we will see you in 1 week.